Hello, friends. We want to know from which cities you listen to us. Like and write in the comments where you are from, and also share what shocking stories happened in your city or even to you. Subscribe because the next story may be about your city or your personal drama. And now a new exciting story. Finn Wells sat at his desk in the offices of the Horizon Trust, a charity on the 14th floor of a downtown Chicago skyscraper. The clock on the wall read 4:27 p.m., and clouds were gathering outside, promising rain. His laptop was open to a report on funding for a new shelter, but Finn hadn't been able to concentrate for half an hour. In front of him lay the thin folder that had arrived an hour earlier by courier. There was no name or address on the cover, just his initials written in black marker, FW. He knew what was inside. He had hired a private investigator, Ron Keller, 2 weeks ago after he noticed that Catherine, his wife, had been staying late at work until midnight and avoiding his questions. Finn hadn't wanted to believe the worst, but her distant, short answers and constant calls from unknown numbers had forced him to act. He swallowed, feeling his throat tighten, and opened the folder. The first photograph was blurry, but the faces were clear. Catherine, in a navy dress, sitting at a table in the Vantage restaurant with a man in an expensive suit. His hand was touching hers. Finn recognized him as Oliver Crow, the owner of a media empire that competed with Catherine's Wells Vision. The second photograph, they were leaving the restaurant, Catherine laughing, her hair falling over her shoulder, Oliver holding her waist. The third, they were getting into his car, a black Mercedes. Finn closed the folder, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. "Hey, Finn, are you still there?" A voice came from the door. It was Linda Marshall, the Foundation's project coordinator, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a habit of wearing colorful scarves. Today's scarf was orange with a daisy pattern. Finn quickly shoved the folder into the desk drawer. "Yeah, just finishing up a report," he said, trying to keep his voice even. Linda squinted, holding a mug that says, "Best Mom Ever." "You look like you were run over by a truck. Is everything okay?" A little tired. Long day. Finn forced himself to smile. "Well, don't stay up too long. My son played some stupid video game until 3 in the morning yesterday, and this morning he complained that his head hurt. I told him, 'Sleep like normal people.'" Linda laughed and walked out, leaving behind the smell of mint tea. Finn exhaled. Linda was chatty, but her presence distracted him from his thoughts for a moment. He pulled out his phone and texted Catherine, "Are you home for dinner tonight?" A minute later, he received a reply, "Going to be late, board of directors. Don't wait up." Finn stared at the screen, feeling something inside him break. He put the phone away and decided to go home. The report could wait. In the elevator, Finn stared at his reflection in the mirrored wall. His dark hair was slightly gray, his blue shirt tucked neatly into his trousers. He looked like a man in control, but he didn't feel like one. It was drizzling outside, and Finn turned up the collar of his coat as he walked toward the taxi stand. A yellow Prius pulled up to the curb, and the driver, a man with a thick beard and an accent, called out, "Get in." "Where are we going, boss?" "Lakeview, Addison Street," Finn answered, getting into the back seat. "Oh, Lakeview, that's a nice neighborhood. My sister lives there, always bragging about the Lakeview," the driver said, turning on the meter. "Are you from around here?" "Yes, I've been here all my life." Finn looked out the window, where drops were running down the glass. "And I'm from Georgia. I came here 3 years ago." "Chicago is no joke. It's like a freezer in the winter." The driver chuckled. "Do you have a family?" "Wife, son," Finn answered briefly, not in the mood for chatter. "Cool, cool. My boys are all grown up, one in college, the other in the army. I'm proud, you know, but I miss them." The driver fell silent, noticing that Finn wasn't answering. Finn nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered meeting Catherine in 2008 at a charity event. She was energetic, with a sharp mind and a smile he couldn't look away from. They married a year later, and Logan was born in 2008. Back then, their life had seemed like a perfect plan. Now that plan was falling apart. The Wells house, a two-story brick cottage with a neat lawn, greeted Finn with silence. He dropped his keys on the table in the entryway and turned on the light. There was an unfinished bottle of orange juice in the kitchen. Logan always forgot to put it away. Finn walked into the living room where his son's sneakers and backpack lay on the couch. Logan was gone, even though he should have been home from school an hour ago. Finn pulled out his phone to make a call, but then the front door slammed so hard the glass shook. Logan burst into the house, his dark hair wet from the rain, his face red with anger. "Is she really sick?" he shouted, throwing his backpack on the floor. "Logan, what happened?" Finn stood up, feeling his heart speed up. "I saw Mom, with that guy in the car. They were kissing like I was blind." Logan clenched his fists, his voice shaking. "Does she think I'm an idiot?" Finn froze. He wanted to say something soothing, but the words stuck. "Where have you been?" he asked instead. "Downtown, with friends. We were walking past this stupid restaurant, Vantage, or whatever it was called. And there she was, with some guy in a suit, getting into his car." Logan kicked the backpack. "Did you know?" Finn sank down onto the couch, feeling his legs buckle. "I only found out today," he said quietly. Logan stared at him, his eyes shining with anger and tears. "So what? You're just sitting here? Why aren't you doing anything?" "Logan, calm down. We'll figure this out." Finn tried to speak firmly, but his voice sounded uncertain. "You'll figure it out? She's humiliating you, and you'll figure it out." Logan grabbed his backpack and rushed to the stairs. "You both disgust me." The door to his upstairs room slammed. Finn was left alone, listening to the rain pounding the windows. He pulled the folder out of the bag he'd grabbed from the office and opened it again. The photos lay before him like evidence of a conviction. He didn't know what to do. Call Catherine, make a scene, or pretend nothing had happened for Logan's sake. Finn walked into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it down in one gulp. His gaze fell on a frame on the refrigerator, a photo from last year's vacation in Colorado. Catherine, Logan, and himself, all smiling against a backdrop of mountains. Logan had been happier then, less angry. Finn remembered his son asking for a new skateboard and Catherine promising to take him to a Bulls game, but never finding the time. The doorbell rang. Finn frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. Mrs. Glover, their neighbor, stood there, an elderly woman with perfectly styled curls and a pink tracksuit. She was holding a plastic container in her hands. "Finn, honey, I brought cookies," she said, smiling. "I just baked some oatmeal raisin cookies. Logan likes those." "Thank you, Mrs. Glover." Finn took the container, trying to look friendly. "Oh, you're all wet. The weather is terrible, isn't it? My cat, Mr. Whiskers, hides under the bed all day." She shook her head. "How is Catherine? Always busy, huh?" "Yeah, business," Finn answered briefly, not wanting to go into details. "Well, say hi to her, and come to the barbecue on Saturday. I'm making my famous ribs." Mrs. Glover waved and walked away, leaving Finn with the container in his hands. He closed the door and put the cookies on the table. The neighbor was always kind, but now her chatter was just annoying. Finn sat down at the table, opened his laptop, and tried to distract himself by checking his email. Among the letters was one from Linda. "Don't forget to sign the budget by tomorrow." He closed the laptop. Work could not drown out his thoughts. Finn went up to his bedroom, where another picture sat on the dresser. He and Catherine at a wedding, both young and laughing. He thought back to 2007, when he was on the verge of dropping out of college because of his debts. He had been sitting at the Moonlight Cafe, counting his last dollars to buy a coffee. The waitress, a girl with brown hair, put a sandwich in front of him and said, "It's from the house." Finn knew it wasn't true. She paid for it herself. The gesture gave him the strength to carry on, to find a job, to finish his studies. He never learned her name, but that moment stayed with him. Now, looking at the pictures of Catherine with another man, Finn felt like the girl from the cafe had disappeared. He didn't know how to talk to Logan, didn't know how to move on. His son was right. He had to do something. But what? Divorce? Scandal? Or try to save a family that might no longer exist? Chicago, February 2007. Snow fell in heavy flakes, coating the sidewalks in a gray slush. The streetlights on North Avenue barely pierced the evening gloom, and the wind blew shreds of newspaper across the deserted streets. The Moonlight Cafe, a small diner with a neon sign and fogged windows, hummed with conversations. The interior smelled of fried bacon, coffee, and damp clothes. Catherine Davis, 24, wiped down the counter with a damp cloth, her brown hair pulled back into a messy bun. Her uniform, a black t-shirt with the cafe's logo, and an apron was wrinkled from a 6-hour shift. She was studying marketing at DePaul University, but rent and textbooks kept her working nights. It was Friday, and the cafe was packed with students, truck drivers, and a couple of locals fleeing domestic disputes. "Kate, table 7 is whining again that the soup is cold," shouted Marge, the cook, from the kitchen. She was in her 40s, with dyed red hair and a voice that could be heard over any noise. Catherine rolled her eyes but smiled. "Seriously, this is the third time they've complained. I just warmed it up." She grabbed the coffee pot and headed for the table by the window. There were 2 people sitting at the table, a man in a leather jacket with a thick mustache and a woman in a knitted hat who was picking at potatoes on a plate. "Miss, the soup is barely warm," the man said, poking the bowl with a spoon. "Is this from yesterday?" "Excuse me, I'll bring you a hot one right now," Catherine replied, taking the bowl. "Do you want me to add more coffee?" "Yeah, and more sugar," the woman muttered without looking up. Catherine returned to the counter, handed Marge the bowl, and poured 2 cups of coffee. Her legs were aching, but she tried to keep her back straight. The tip was meager today, $12 for 3 hours, and she was calculating in her head whether it would be enough to buy a bus ticket for the rest of the month. At the counter, in the corner, sat the guy Catherine had noticed an hour ago. He was about 24 years old, with dark hair sticking out from under a baseball cap and a tired face. His jacket was tattered, and there was an empty cup of coffee in front of him. He was counting coins on the table, arranging them into neat piles. Catherine had seen people like him, students who couldn't make ends meet. She was like him. "More coffee?" she asked, coming up. The boy flinched as if he had been caught off guard. No, thanks," he said quietly. "I'm leaving now." Catherine noticed his fingers shaking as he picked up the coins. She glanced at his notebook lying next to him. The page was covered with numbers and crossed out lines, as if he were trying to balance a budget. "We're having a special today," she lied, placing a ham and cheese sandwich in front of him. "Take it while it's hot." He looked at her, his blue eyes narrowing. "I didn't order it." "I know. It's the house." Catherine shrugged and walked away to another table before he could object. The boy Finn Clark stared at the sandwich. He was an economics major at the University of Illinois, but the last few months had been hell. His mother had died of cancer, leaving hospital bills, and his landlord was threatening to evict him. Finn had been working as a mover on weekends, but his money was running low. He had come to the diner to warm up with the dollar he had in his pocket. Now the sandwich, smelling of warm bread, seemed unreal. Catherine returned to the counter where Marge was cleaning the grill, humming an old song called "Sweet Home Chicago." "Are you feeding everyone again?" Marge asked, nodding at Finn. "Yesterday you gave that trucker a free coffee." "He's not everything," Catherine replied, pouring herself some water from a pitcher. "Have you seen him count his coins? I only have $5 in my purse, but at least I eat." "You're too soft, baby," Marge shook her head. "This is Chicago. It's every man for himself." "So what? I will die if I help once." Catherine took a sip of water and wiped her hands on her apron. A new customer approached the counter, a guy about 30 years old in a thick parka and with headphones. "Hey, can I get a double cheeseburger?" "And a Coke, no ice," he said, throwing a tenner on the counter. "We'll do it now." Catherine wrote down the order and shouted to Marge, "Double cheese, 1 cola." "Got it," Marge responded, slapping the grill. Finn, sitting in the corner, took a bite of his sandwich. He ate slowly, as if he was afraid the food would disappear. Catherine stole a glance at him and felt relieved. She didn't know why she cared about this guy eating, but it was nice to see him chewing. Catherine's shift ended at 11 p.m. She counted her tips $18, including a quarter from the guy with the headphones. Marge had already left, leaving the kitchen to a young assistant named Louis, who washed dishes and listened to rap music on his phone speaker. "Cat, are you coming?" Louis called, wiping his hands. "The bus leaves in 10 minutes. "Coming, coming," Catherine replied, taking off her apron. She glanced into the room. Finn had gone, leaving behind an empty plate and a folded napkin. She smiled and went into the back room to get her coat. It was cold outside. The wind was blowing in her face. Catherine pulled her hat down and noticed that the snow was falling harder. She decided to take a shortcut through the alley behind the cafe to catch the bus. In the alley, by the trash can, sat a teenager, about 16 years old, in a thin jacket and torn sneakers. His face was dirty, and he hid his hands in his sleeves to keep warm. Catherine stopped. She saw homeless people every day, but this guy looked too young. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, keeping her distance. The teenager, it was Jake Reed, looked up. His eyes were wary, but he didn't answer. Catherine noticed that he was shaking. She opened her bag, pulled out $5, half of her tip, and walked to the kitchen window, where Louis was still washing dishes. "Louis, make me some soup, quick, and a bun," she said, putting the money through the window. "What's wrong with you? We're closing." Louis was indignant. "Come on, don't talk nonsense." Catherine tapped the glass. "This is for the guy in the alley." Louis sighed, but 3 minutes later he handed over a plastic container of chicken soup and a bun wrapped in foil. Catherine returned to the alley, set the food down on the asphalt a meter away from Jake, and said, "Eat while it's warm." She left without looking back, so as not to embarrass him. Jake watched her go, his fingers tightening around the container. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the smell of the soup made his stomach clench. He opened the lid and began to eat, not noticing the tears mixing with the snow on his cheeks. Catherine ran to the bus stop, where the bus was already waiting. The driver, an elderly man with thick eyebrows, opened the door and muttered, "Faster, girl, I'm not standing here all night." "Sorry." Catherine jumped inside and dropped coins into the machine. The bus was warm but smelled damp. Catherine sat by the window, watching the snow cover the city. Next to her sat a woman in her 60s, holding a plastic bag with a bottle of milk sticking out of it. "It's cold, isn't it?" the woman said, adjusting her glasses. "I tell my daughter, move to Florida, at least your bones won't freeze there." "Yeah, winter is brutal here," Catherine agreed, smiling. "Where are you coming from?" "Work," the woman asked. "From the cafe, waitress," answered Catherine. "And you?" "From the market, I bought cheese. My grandson loves it. He gobbles up sandwiches every day," the woman laughed. Catherine nodded, but her thoughts were on the boy in the cafe and the teenager in the alley. She didn't know why she'd helped them, but she felt it was the right thing to do. The bus pulled away, and she closed her eyes, imagining herself getting to her tiny apartment and collapsing on the couch. Finn walked down the snowy street from the cafe, his hands in his pockets. The sandwich had given him strength, and he decided that tomorrow he would go to the library to look for job postings. He didn't know the waitress's name, but her words, "This is from the house," echoed in his head. For the first time in months, he felt like he wasn't alone. Jake, sitting in the alley, finished his soup and put the bun in his pocket. He decided that he would go to the recruiting office in the morning. He heard that the Army gives a chance to start over. The face of the girl who left the food was imprinted in his memory. He did not know if he would see her again, but he promised himself not to forget. Catherine, sitting on the bus, pulled out a notepad and began writing notes for a marketing course. She wasn't thinking about the two guys she'd helped. To her, it was just another night in Chicago, where everyone was fighting for their place in the snow. Chicago, March 2025. Mornings at Wells Vision, on the 32nd floor of a glass skyscraper in the Loop, began with the usual noises: the hum of coffee machines, the ringing of phones, the footsteps of employees. Catherine Wells, 42, sat at her desk in a corner office overlooking Lake Michigan. Her navy blazer hung over the back of her chair, and her hair, usually pulled back into a severe bun, was loose, a sign that she hadn't slept more than 5 hours. A laptop screen glowed in front of her, displaying a presentation for the next day's investor meeting, but Catherine stared out the window, fiddling with her pen. Wells Vision, her marketing company, was booming. Deals with big brands, new data analysis software, an office in Singapore. But success came at a price. Catherine worked 14-hour days, fielding calls from different time zones. At home, she emerged to change and kiss Logan, her 17-year-old son, as he slept. She barely spoke to Finn, her husband. He was busy with his foundation, and his endless questions of, "Are you okay?" irritated her. She wasn't okay, but she didn't want to discuss it. "Catherine, are you ready?" Sarah, her assistant, a 28-year-old with a short haircut and a tablet in her hands, appeared in the doorway. "The team is waiting in the conference room. The presentation is loaded." Catherine nodded, stifling a yawn. "Give me 5 minutes. Do you have coffee?" "I'm bringing it now, double espresso, no sugar." Sarah smiled and disappeared. Catherine stood up and stretched, feeling her shoulders ache. She went to the mirror on the wall, adjusted her blouse, and applied lipstick. Her face looked tired despite the makeup. She remembered Finn saying last week, "You work too much." She waved it off, but it stung. He didn't understand that Wells Vision wasn't just a job. It was her baby, her proof that she was worth something. A team of 6 people gathered in the conference room. Catherine walked in holding a cup of coffee and sat at the head of the table. A slide of revenue growth was displayed on a projector. "Okay, let's get started," she said, clicking the remote. "The investors want Asian market figures tomorrow. Who's ready?" Me, Todd, an analyst, a guy in his 30s with thick-rimmed glasses, raised his hand. "We grew 12% in Singapore last quarter, but we sagged in Japan. We need to push local advertising." "I agree." Catherine made a note in her notebook. "Jessica, what's up with the creative?" Jessica, a designer with bright blue nails, opened her laptop. "I sent you 3 concepts for the campaign. One with an emphasis on ecology, another on youth. The third is neutral, but boring, to be honest." "Show me the youth one," said Catherine, taking a sip of coffee. The slides changed to show brightly colored banners of teenagers in sneakers. The team perked up, but Catherine frowned. "Too colorful. Remove half the effects, otherwise the brand will be lost." "Got it. I'll redo it by the evening." Jessica nodded, writing it down. In the corner sat Mike, an intern, a guy in his 20s, nervously twirling a pen. Catherine, can I ask you a question?" he said, blushing. "What if investors ask about competitors, like Crow Media?" Catherine tensed at the mention of Oliver Crow. "We don't discuss competitors. Focus on our data," she replied sharply. Mike fell silent, and Todd whispered to him, "Take my example, newbie. Don't pester me with questions." Catherine ignored it, but Oliver's name stuck in her head. She'd met him 3 months earlier at a conference in New York. He was charming, with graying temples and a smile that made her feel special. He proposed a business partnership, then invited her to dinner. Catherine had accepted, thinking it was just business. But his compliments, his attention, it was a breath of fresh air after months of pressure. After the meeting, Catherine returned to the office, where Sarah had already left a new cup of coffee and a note. "Call from Tokyo at 2 p.m. Catherine sighed and opened her email. Among the letters was one from Oliver. "Catherine, how about dinner tonight? I have an idea for a joint project. Vantage, 8 p.m. She froze, feeling her heart beat faster. She knew there was more to this than just business. But the thought of putting on a dress, sitting in a restaurant, and not thinking about work was too tempting. Catherine replied, "Okay, see you later." She closed her laptop and looked at a photo on the table. Her, Finn, and Logan on the beach 2 years ago. Logan was building a sand castle and Finn was laughing and hugging her. Now Logan was always in his room and Finn was asking when she would be home, like she was his secretary. Catherine felt a twinge of guilt, but she pushed it aside. She deserved one night to herself. That evening, Catherine left the office, throwing a coat over her black dress. It was chilly outside, so she called a taxi. The driver, a woman in her 50s with an eyebrow piercing, turned on the radio, where pop music was playing. "Where are we going?" she asked, chewing gum. "Vantage Restaurant on Michigan Avenue," Catherine answered, checking her phone. "Wow, this is a great place. My daughter used to work there as a waitress. She says the tips are great," said the driver, pulling out onto the road. "Are you on a date there or something?" "A business meeting," Catherine answered briefly, looking out the window. "Well, yeah, that's what everyone says," the driver chuckled. "My husband also had business meetings, and then I found lipstick in his car." Catherine said nothing, but her cheeks flushed. She turned her attention to her phone, where she saw a text from Finn. "Logan asked for pizza. Should I order it?" She replied, "Yeah, get pepperoni." Conversations with Finn always boiled down to little things like this, and it infuriated her. He didn't ask how she was, didn't notice that she was on edge. The Vantage Restaurant was ablaze with lights, floor-to-ceiling windows, and waiters in white shirts. Catherine walked in, and the maitre d', a young man with a perfect haircut, showed her to her table. Oliver Crow was already waiting, in a dark gray suit, a glass of wine in his hand. His smile was warm, but there was something calculating in his eyes. "Catherine, you look amazing," he said, standing up. "Thank you." She sat up, feeling the tension ease. "You're early." "I didn't want to keep you waiting." Oliver pushed the menu towards her. "I recommend the truffle risotto. They make it better here than in Milan." "Sounds tempting," Catherine smiled, opening the menu. At the next table sat a couple, a man in a tie and a woman in a red dress who was laughing loudly. "Seriously, Bob, have you forgotten our anniversary again?" she said, poking him with her fork. "Oh, come on, I'll make it up to you, I promise," the man replied, raising his glass. Catherine looked away, feeling out of place. Oliver noticed this and said, "Relax, Catherine. You're too tense. Work? Work, family, everything at once," she shrugged. "Sometimes it feels like I'm carrying 100 kilos on my shoulders." "I understand." Oliver leaned closer. "You build an empire, but who takes care of you?" Catherine looked at him. His words had struck a chord. Finn hadn't spoken like that, hadn't looked at her like she was the only one in the room. "Let's get down to business," she said to change the subject. "You wrote about the project." "Right?" Oliver leaned back in his chair. "Crow Media wants to launch a platform for targeted advertising. Your data analytics software is the perfect foundation. If we team up, we'll crush the market." "Interesting." Catherine narrowed her eyes. "But Wells Vision doesn't just share technology. What do you suggest?" "A 50-50th partnership. You bring the software, I bring the resources and connections. Plus, I know how to relieve your stress." He smiled, touching her hand. Catherine didn't pull away. His touch was light, but it sent a jolt up her spine. She knew it was dangerous, but part of her wanted this not a deal, but attention. "I'll think about it," she said, sipping the wine the waiter had just brought. "Think, but not too long," Oliver winked. "Opportunities like these come once in a lifetime." The dinner lasted 2 hours. Oliver talked about his trips to Europe, his meetings with politicians, how he built his company. Catherine listened, laughed, feeling alive for the first time in months. As they left the restaurant, he offered her a ride. "My car is 2 blocks away," he said, pointing to a black Mercedes. "Let's go, it's cold." Catherine hesitated, but nodded. The car smelled of leather and his cologne. Oliver turned on the heated seats and said, "You deserve more, Catherine. Not just a job, but a life." She didn't respond, but when he leaned down and kissed her, she didn't push him away. The kiss was short, but her heart was pounding. "I have to go," she said, opening the door. "We'll call each other." Of course, Oliver smiled as he watched her leave. Catherine hailed a taxi and sat in the back seat, feeling a mixture of guilt and euphoria. The driver, A young guy with a tattoo on his neck asked. Home? Yes, Lakeview, Addison Street, she answered, looking out the window. Cool neighborhood, the guy said, turning on the music. My brother rents an apartment there. He's always bragging about it. Catherine didn't answer. She was thinking about Oliver, about his words, about the kiss. Finn and Logan were waiting for her at home, but for the first time, she didn't want to go back there. Chicago, March 2025. It was a quiet Tuesday morning at the Horizon Trust. Finn Wells, 42, sat at his desk, sorting through a stack of paperwork. His 14th floor office looked as usual, neat, with files on the shelves and a photo of Logan on the windowsill. But Finn couldn't concentrate. It had been a week since he'd learned of Catherine's infidelity, and every day was a blow. Logan barely spoke, locking himself in his room, and Catherine came home after midnight, citing work. Finn opened his computer's inbox, checking for new emails. Among the spam and reports, one stood out, unsubscribed, from an unknown address. He clicked on it. Inside was a short message. Your son is in danger. Ask your wife what she did. Attached to the email was a photo of Logan walking down the street with a backpack, taken from a distance, but his face was clear. Finn felt his palms sweat. He reread the text, then enlarged the photo. The photo was taken yesterday, and Logan was wearing the same green jacket. Shit, Finn muttered, grabbing his phone. He dialed Logan's number, but there was no answer. So he texted, Are you at school? Call me. A minute later, he texted back, Yeah, I'm fine, leave me alone. Finn exhaled, but the anxiety didn't go away. Finn, are you alive? Peter, the Grant's manager, a balding man in his 50s, wearing an Argyle sweater, knocked on the door. He was holding a folder and a thermos. Yeah, just busy. Finn quickly closed the letter on the screen. Look, I wrote up a grant proposal for children's centers. Want to take a look? Peter plopped down in the chair opposite. My wife whined all night last night that I wasn't home enough. She says the kids don't recognize me. I understand, Finn said, though his thoughts were on the letter. Leave a request, I'll check it by lunchtime. Cool, you're a savior. Peter slapped the table and left, leaving the smell of coffee. Finn opened the email again. Who could have sent this? He thought about Catherine, her affair with Oliver Crow. Perhaps one of Wells Vision's competitors was putting pressure on him, or was it personal? He knew he had to talk to Catherine, but after their last conversation cold and short, he wasn't sure she'd tell him the truth. Finn decided to take action. He found the contact information for a security company called ShieldPoint online, which was recommended by a friend from the foundation. The website said, Professional Protection, Confidentiality. Finn called and arranged a meeting with their specialist that same day. He didn't want to take any risks until he figured out who was threatening Logan. At noon, Finn left his office and headed to the cafe on the ground floor of the building where the meeting was to take place. Brew and Bites was a bustling cafe with wooden tables and the smell of fresh croissants. Finn ordered water and sat by the window, watching the people pass by. His phone vibrated a text from Catherine, going to be late, meeting with partners. Finn clenched his jaw and put the phone away. Mr. Wells, a voice said. Finn looked up. A man in his mid-30s stood before him, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. Short dark hair, a scar on his temple, a calm gaze. Jake Reed, ShieldPoint. Yes, it's me. Finn stood up, shaking hands. Have a seat. Jake sat down, placing a thin folder on the table. You said you needed protection for your son. Tell me more, he said, opening his notebook. Finn paused, then pulled out the printed letter and a photo of Logan. This came today. Someone is threatening my son, Logan. He's 17. I don't know who it is, but my wife is mentioned. Jake read the letter carefully, then looked at the photo. The photo is fresh. Where was he yesterday? At school, then with friends downtown, Finn answered. He didn't say anything weird, but he doesn't talk much these days. Got it, Jake made a note. Do you have any enemies? Business problems? I work for a charity. They're not exactly enemies, Finn shrugged. But my wife, Catherine runs Wells Vision. They have competition, big contracts. Maybe that's related. Jake nodded, looking at Catherine's name in his notes. Finn showed him a picture of her on his phone. Catherine at a corporate party, wearing a blue dress, smiling. Jake froze for a second. He remembered 2007, the alley behind the Moonlight Cafe, the girl who left him soup and a muffin. It was her. He hadn't known she was Finn's wife until he saw the picture. Jake decided he would protect their son to make up for the night she gave him a chance to live. "I'll take it," Jake said, closing his notebook. "I'll start today. I need Logan's schedule, the addresses of his hangouts, and access to your home cameras if you have them." "Okay, I'll arrange everything." Finn felt relieved. "How much will it cost?" "We'll discuss it with the company, but first I'm just going to start working." Jake stood up. "If anything comes up, I'll let you know." "Thank you." Finn shook his hand, feeling like he had taken the first step. The cafe was buzzing. At the next table sat a woman of about 30, in sports clothes, with a stroller. She was feeding a baby a banana, chatting on the phone at the same time. "No, Mom, I haven't forgotten about your cake," she said loudly. "Yes, with cream, just like you like it." Finn smiled slightly, but his thoughts were on Logan. He paid for the water and went out. It was sunny outside, but cool. He decided to stop by home to check if everything was okay. Back at home in Lakeview, Finn parked his car and noticed that the trash can by the porch had been overturned. He frowned and picked it up, only to find a crumpled piece of paper on the ground. It was a printout with the same text as the letter. "Your son is in danger. Ask your wife." Finn clutched the paper, feeling his pulse quicken. Someone was at their house. He looked around, but the street was empty, except for his neighbor, Mr. Carter, walking his Labrador. "Hey, Finn!" shouted Carter, a bearded man in his 60s. "Did the garbage man screw up again?" "Looks like it." Finn forced a smile. "How's your dog?" "Oh, Buddy's in shape. He spent half an hour chasing a squirrel yesterday." Carter laughed. "Are you and Catherine coming to the picnic on Saturday?" "We'll see," Finn answered evasively, putting the sheet of paper in his pocket. Carter left, and Finn walked into the house. The hallway smelled of lemon soap. The cleaner had been there that morning. He walked into the living room, where there was a note from Logan on the table. "Gone to see Mike, back by 8. Finn checked the cameras on his phone app, nothing out of the ordinary. But the letter he'd found by the dumpster was nagging him. Finn called Logan's school to make sure he was there. The secretary, Miss Rodriguez, answered cheerfully. "Mr. Wells, Logan is in chemistry class. Is everything okay?" "Yeah, just checking," Finn said. "If anything weird happens, call me, okay?" "Of course, don't worry," she replied. "Oh, I almost forgot. We have a parent-teacher meeting tomorrow. Will you come?" "I'll try." Finn hung up, feeling a little calmer. He sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out his laptop, and began making a list for Jake. Logan's schedule, school addresses, friends' houses. As he worked, he thought about Catherine. Should he tell her about the letters? She was already on edge, and after their fight, she had become even colder. Finn remembered how she looked in that photo of her in the restaurant with Oliver and clenched his fists. But right now, Logan was the most important thing. Jake sat at his desk in the small, gray-walled room back at Shield Point. He opened the file with Finn and Catherine's details that the firm had given him. Catherine's photo was in front of him. He couldn't believe that this was the same girl from 2007. He'd been at rock bottom then, hungry and cold, and her kindness, soup, and the words, "Eat while you're warm," had given him the strength to join the army. Now she was in trouble, even if she didn't know it. Jake decided that he would do whatever it took to keep Logan safe. It was his duty. His colleague, Tina, a woman in her 40s with a dragon tattoo on her wrist, peered into the room. "Reed, you haven't eaten lunch again," she said, chewing an apple. "There's pizza in the kitchen. Take it before it's gone." "Not hungry," Jake replied, not looking up from the screen. "Well, that's a shame. It's with anchovies, my favorite." Tina chuckled and left. Jake closed the file and dialed his contact at the firm to request data on Wells Vision and possible competitors. He knew the threats were related to Catherine, and he was going to find out who was behind it. But for now, his job was to protect Logan. He looked at his watch, 3 p.m. time to head to the school to meet the guy and get to work. Finn finished the list and mailed it to Jake. He stood up, poured himself a water, and looked at the photo of Logan on the fridge, his son at the skate park holding a board. Finn promised himself that he wouldn't let anyone hurt him. He didn't know what to do about Catherine, but with Jake by his side, he felt like they had a chance. For the first time in a week, he felt like he could handle this. It was a rowdy Friday night in Lakeview, with teenagers hanging out outside pizza parlors, cars honking at intersections, and music blaring from bars. Logan Wells, 17, sat on the couch in his room, scrolling through his phone. His green jacket lay on the floor, next to his sneakers and an empty energy drink. Group chat messages flashed across the screen. His friends Mike and Sophie were discussing a concert by local rock band Neon Static at the Pulse Club downtown. Logan clutched his phone, anger boiling inside him. The week after the fight with his dad had been a lousy one. He couldn't get over seeing his mother in the car with that guy and his dad just saying nothing like nothing happened. And now this new security guard Finn hired had to watch him like a child. Logan read the text from Mike. "Get a ticket, dude. This is gonna be fired," he responded. "I'm in." No security guard was going to stop him from partying. Logan grabbed his jacket, stuffed his wallet in his pocket, and slipped out the back door so his father wouldn't notice. Finn was in the study, staring at his laptop. Logan ran across the yard, jumped a low fence, and found himself outside. The air was crisp, with the smell of wet asphalt after the morning rain. He pulled his hood up and headed for the bus stop. "Hey, Logan, where are you going?" shouted a neighbor boy, Timmy, about 12 years old, riding a bike. "None of your business, kid," Logan said without stopping. "Oh well, you're boring anyway." Timmy stuck his tongue out and drove away. Logan reached the bus stop, where a bus was waiting. The driver, a heavy-set man with a beard, opened the door. "Ticket or card?" he muttered without looking. "Map." Logan attached the phone to the terminal and sent it to the end of the lounge. A girl in her 20s was sitting next to him, wearing headphones and bobbing her head to the music. She was chewing gum and scrolling through social media. Logan turned to the window, thinking about the concert. He didn't care about the rules, his father, his mother. He just wanted to turn off his brain. The Pulse Club in the West Loop was a hive of activity. Teenagers and college students milled around outside, their wristbands flashing in the dark. Logan met Mike and Sophie at the door. Mike, a lanky guy with a pierced eyebrow, held up 3 tickets. Sophie, with purple streaks in her hair, was munching on a lollipop. "Dude, you finally made it out." Mike clapped Logan on the shoulder. "Thought your dad was going to lock you out of the house." "He's busy with his paperwork," Logan shrugged. "And that overseer of his hasn't arrived yet." "Overseer?" Sophie laughed. "Like a bodyguard? Are your parents completely nuts?" "Something like that," Logan grimaced. "My dad thinks I'm in danger. Crazy." "Well, if anything happens, we've got your back," Mike winked, handing Logan a ticket. At the entrance stood a merch seller, a guy in a baseball cap with the band's logo. "T-shirts, badges, take them while they last," he shouted, waving a black T-shirt. "How much?" Sophie asked, pointing to the guitar icon. $5, the seller replied. "Take 2, I'll give you a discount." "I'll take 1, Sophie handed him the money and pinned the badge to her backpack. Logan walked inside, ignoring the crowd. The club was packed, the stage flashing red and blue lights, the bass from the music pounding his ears. He pushed his way to the bar, where the bartender, a woman with a neck tattoo, was pouring beers. "Got any non-alcoholic drinks?" Logan shouted over the noise. "Cola or Sprite," she answered without looking. "Cola." Logan threw $3 on the counter. "Here," the bartender thrust the can at him and turned to another customer. Logan walked away, took a sip of his Coke, and began to make his way toward the stage. Mike and Sophie were already jumping in the crowd, waving their arms. Logan joined in, feeling the music drowning out his anger. But after half an hour, he noticed that the crowd near the stage had become denser, and some guys were starting to push each other. One of the big guys in a leather jacket brushed his shoulder against Logan. "Watch where you're going, little one," the boy barked. "Watch it yourself," Logan snapped, clenching his fists. "What did you say?" The guy stepped closer. His friends, two in hoods, grinned. Logan realized that a fight was coming, but he didn't want to back down. Mike noticed this and shouted, "Logan, get out of there." But Logan didn't make it. The guy in the jacket grabbed him by the collar, and the crowd began to roar. At that moment, someone grabbed Logan's shoulder and pulled him back. "Easy," said a deep voice. Logan turned around and saw Jake Reed. He was wearing a black jacket with a backpack over his shoulder, and he was looking at the guy in the jacket without emotion. "Who else is this?" The guy released Logan, but didn't back down. "No one," Jake stepped between them. "Go on, no problem." The guy looked at Jake, then at his calm face, and spat on the floor. "I don't feel like getting dirty," he muttered and walked away with his friends. The crowd dispersed, and the music began to thunder again. Logan broke free from Jake's grip and shouted, "Who are you? What the hell are you doing here?" "Jake Reed." "Your father hired me," Jake replied, keeping his voice down. "Come on, let's talk outside." "I'm not going anywhere." Logan squeezed the can of cola so hard it crumpled. "You're the warden, right? You think I'm going to listen?" Jake looked at him, his eyes calm but firm. "That's not why I'm here. I want you to be alive," he said. "Let's go outside, 5 minutes." Logan wanted to snap back, but something in Jake's tone silenced him. He threw the can in the trash and walked toward the exit, anger mingling with curiosity. It was cold outside. The street lights illuminated the wet sidewalk. Several people were smoking at the entrance. One, a guy with dreadlocks, was offering everyone gum. "Take it mint-free," he said, pointing the pack at Logan. "Get lost," Logan muttered as he walked past. Jake stopped against the wall, away from the crowd. "Look, I know you're mad," he began. "But you were almost in trouble down there. Those guys weren't kidding." "I could handle it," Logan crossed his arms. "I don't need a nanny." "Maybe I could," Jake shrugged. "But I'm not here to babysit you. My contract is to keep you safe." "Safety?" Logan snorted. "This is about Mom, right? Her dealings with that guy." Jake remained silent, his face neutral. "I don't dig into your family. My job is you. If you want to go to a concert, go. But let me know where you are, so I don't have to look for you in the crowd." Logan stared at him, expecting a lecture, but there was none. "You won't make me listen," he said, but more quietly. "I'm not trying," Jake said. "But if you decide to ditch again, text me. Here's the number." He held out his business card. Logan took it, put it in his pocket, and muttered, "Okay, go ahead. I'll get home myself." "Are you sure?" Jake narrowed his eyes. "Yeah." Logan turned and walked toward the bus stop, feeling the adrenaline draining. He was angry, but the scene at the club had been impressive. Jake hadn't yelled or threatened, he'd just settled it in a second. Logan didn't want to admit it, but it had been cool. At the bus stop, Logan sat down on a bench, watching the bus pull up. The passenger, a woman in her 40s in a postman's uniform, got out carrying a bag. "Hey, man, do you know where the subway is?" she asked, adjusting her cap. "2 blocks to the left," Logan answered without looking. "Thank you." The woman walked away, singing. Logan pulled out his phone and looked at Jake's business card. He hadn't meant to call, but he saved the number. The bus pulled up and he hopped on, wondering how he was going to tell Mike about this supervisor. He was still angry at his parents, but for the first time in a week, he felt like someone was on his side, even if he didn't want them to be. Monday began in chaos at Wells Vision. Catherine Wells, 42, stood by the window of her 32ND floor office, clutching her phone. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. An hour earlier, her sales director had called to tell her that a major client, the sporting goods chain Peak Pulse, had canceled a $10 million contract. The cause was a data breach. Their new ad campaign, developed by Wells Vision, had leaked online a week before it was due to launch. Catherine blamed hackers, but she had a growing feeling that this was no accident. She opened her laptop, where an email from the IT department read, "Unauthorized access to servers detected. Working to resolve it." Catherine slammed her palm on the table, feeling her stomach clench. Wells Vision was her life, and every mistake hit her personally. She dialed Sarah, her assistant. "Sarah, gather it and legal in the conference room in 15 minutes, Catherine said, her voice sharp. "I already am," Sarah replied, her voice shaking. Catherine, there's another reporter from Chicago Tech calling, wanting to comment on the leak." "Tell me there are no comments," Catherine snapped and hung up. She went to the cabinet, pulled out a bottle of water, and drank half of it. Her thoughts raced. Who could have hacked the servers? Competitors? Or someone inside the company? She remembered Oliver Crow, his proposal to merge the companies. It had seemed tempting then, but now she wondered if he was behind it. There was a knock at the door. In walked Carl, the system administrator, a man in his 40s with tousled hair and a wrinkled T-shirt with the Linux logo. "Catherine, I've found an entry point," he said, holding up the tablet. "Someone gained access through a phishing email sent to our intern." "An intern?" Catherine frowned. Why the hell would an intern open letters like that? "Well, he's new, Mike," Carl shrugged. "We already blocked his account, but the data is gone." "Find where, and quickly," Catherine squeezed her temples. "And fire this Mike." "Got it." Carl nodded and walked out, almost colliding with the courier who was carrying a box of coffee. "Hey, where are you going?" shouted the courier, a guy of about 20 in a bright yellow jacket. "Kitchen, at the end of the corridor," Carl said without turning around. Catherine closed the door to block out the noise. She couldn't let the company collapse, not with more contracts on the line. But the thought of Finn and Logan, whom she barely saw, added to the burden. Finn had texted her yesterday, asking when she would be home. She hadn't responded. It was easier to drown herself in work than to deal with his grievances. Meanwhile, Finn Wells sat in his office at Horizon Trust, staring at his phone. He had just read a news story in Chicago Tech. Wells Vision loses contract due to data breach. Finn frowned, remembering the threatening email Logan had received a week ago. The threats had started around the same time as the problems at Catherine's company. It couldn't be a coincidence. He dialed Jake Reed, the security guard he had hired for Logan. "Jake, it's Finn," he said when Finn answered. "Have you seen the news about Wells Vision?" "Yeah, just now." Jake's voice was calm but attentive. "Data leak, big client gone. Know something?" "Not yet, but I don't like it." Finn lowered his voice. "The threats to Logan started the same day Catherine said they were having problems with the servers. I think someone is pressuring her through us." "Any idea who?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure, but she was dating Oliver Crow." Finn paused. "He's from Crow Media, their competitor. Logan saw them together, and it's not just business." Jake was silent for a second, then said, "Got it. I'll check on Crow. I have contacts who might know about his business." "Where is Logan now?" "At school," Finn replied. "Have you talked to him?" "Yeah, a couple days ago," Jake said. "He's not thrilled with me, but I'm keeping an eye on him. Let me know if there's anything new about the threats." "Okay," Finn hung up, feeling a little calmer. He stood up and walked to the window, where the skyscrapers of the Loop were visible. His colleague, Emma, the foundation's secretary, peered into the office, holding a stack of papers. "Finn, will you sign the bills?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. "And by the way, we have a new coffee machine downstairs. Try it. It makes caramel lattes." "I'll sign it. Leave it on the table," Finn replied, smiling. "And I'll pass on the latte. Regular coffee is enough for me." "Well, it's a shame. I'm already addicted." Emma giggled and left, leaving behind the scent of vanilla perfume. Finn returned to the table, but his thoughts were on Catherine. He wanted to call her, ask about the leak, but he knew she would brush it off. Their marriage was crumbling, and threatening Logan was making it worse. He decided to wait until Jake told him. Jake Reed sat in his car, parked outside Logan's school. His laptop was open in the passenger seat, displaying Oliver Crow's profile from a business database. Jake knew Crow was more than just a media mogul. He'd heard of his type in the military, businessmen who bankrolled dubious projects for profit. The Wells Vision leak and the threats to Logan smelled like a targeted attack, and Crow was the prime suspect. Jake dialed his old Army friend, Nick, who now worked in cybersecurity in Detroit. "Nick, it's Reed," he said when Reed answered. "We need help." "Oh, Reed, how old?" Nick's voice was hoarse, but cheerful. "What, in trouble again?" "Not exactly," Jake chuckled. "Looking for info on Oliver Crow, Crow Media." "Anything on him?" "Crow? That sleazy guy?" Nick whistled. "I heard he funded some shady startups in 2020 that went bust. Give me a day, I'll dig into it." "Quickly, if you can," Jake said. "It's about a client." "Got it, I'll do it." Nick hung up. Jake closed his laptop and looked at the school gates. Logan was due out in an hour. Jake remembered Catherine, her face in the photo Finn had shown him. In 2007, she had given him food when he was on the streets, and it had changed his life. Now he would protect her son, no matter the cost. But Crow's name was alarming. Jake knew that people like him weren't content with threats. A delivery van pulled up around the corner, and the driver, a guy wearing a cap with the pizzeria's logo on it, jumped out with boxes. "Hey, man, do you know where the teacher's lounge is?" he called Jake. "Right, second entrance," Jake answered, not taking his eyes off the gate. "Thank you." The guy ran away, almost dropping the pizza. Jake checked his phone. Finn had sent an update on Logan's schedule. He noted that the boy was going to basketball practice tomorrow. Jake decided to step up surveillance until he got the data from Nick. If Crow was behind this, he would find evidence. Meanwhile, Catherine sat in a conference room with a team and a lawyer, a woman in her 50s named Ruth. The table was littered with printouts of server logs. "We've beefed up security, but some of the data is already online," Carl said, poking at the tablet screen. "Someone posted the Peak Pulse campaign to the forum." "Forum?" Catherine frowned. "Which one?" "Dark, for hackers." Carl scratched the back of his head. "We're trying to track it down, but it's like looking for a needle in a haystack." "Not how, but do it," Catherine snapped. "Ruth, what about your reputation?" "I'm preparing a press statement," Ruth replied, adjusting her jacket. "But we need more facts so we don't look like idiots." "Then find them." Catherine stood up, feeling her head splitting. In the corner sat Liz, a marketing intern, a girl in her 20s with a long braid. "Catherine, can I help with social media?" she said timidly. "I can monitor what people are writing about us." "Okay, do it," Catherine nodded without looking. She left the room, feeling her phone vibrate. It was Oliver Crow. "I heard about the leak. If you need help, call." Catherine clutched the phone. His concern seemed genuine, but something in his tone was unsettling. She didn't answer, choosing to focus on the crisis at hand. Finn got home to Lakeview at 6 o'clock. Logan was in his room, listening to music through his headphones. Finn knocked on the door, but his son didn't answer. He walked into the kitchen, where a delivery of sushi was sitting on the table Catherine had ordered it, but hadn't arrived. Finn opened the box, but he didn't feel like eating. He thought about the letter, about the leak, about Crow. Jake was his only hope of figuring this out. The neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, knocked on the door holding a bowl. "Finn, I made enchiladas. Help yourself," she said, smiling. "My grandson loves them, but I overdid it." "Thank you, Anna." Finn took the bowl. "How's your garden?" "Oh, the flowers are already out. Come and see them with Logan." She waved and left. Finn set the bowl down on the table, feeling tired. He texted Jake, "Check for new threats." The reply came quickly, "Working on it." Finn sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV. He didn't know how to protect Logan, but with Jake, he had a chance. Jake, sitting in his car, received a text from Nick. Crow linked to a firm that leaked competitors' data in 2022. Details tomorrow. Jake nodded to himself. That was the first lead. He started the engine and drove to Logan's house to check the perimeter. The threats and the leak were links in the same chain, and he was going to find out who was pulling the strings. Jake Reed sat in his car, parked 2 blocks from Logan's school. His laptop displayed a report from Nick, an old friend from the Army. Oliver Crow, in 2022, had funded a company involved in stealing data from competitors. It confirmed Jake's suspicions that Crow was behind the Wells Vision leak and the threats to Logan. But he needed more evidence to convince Finn. Jake dialed Finna's number. "Mr. Wells, this is Jake. We need to meet. There's news," he said, looking at the school gates where the teenagers were leaving after school. "When?" Finn's voice sounded tired. "Tonight, 6 p.m., there's a bar, the Iron Tap, on Clark Street. Is that okay?" Jake asked. "Yes, I will," Finn replied and hung up. Jake put his phone away and checked his watch. 2:30 p.m. Logan would be out soon, and he should be nearby. He saw the guy in the orange jacket, the flyer guy, approach the car. "Hey man, want a discount on pizza? 2 for the price of 1, he shouted, shoving the paper under the windshield wiper. "I don't eat pizza," Jake replied without opening the window. "Well, that's a shame. Our cheese is sticky, like in the movies." The guy chuckled and walked on. Jake shook his head and turned back to his laptop. He knew talking to Finn wouldn't be easy. Sharing his past would open a box he'd kept closed for years. But Crow was dangerous, and Finn deserved to know the truth. Finn Wells sat in his office at Horizon Trust, staring at the screen with his financial report. His mind was elsewhere: the threats to Logan, the Wells Vision leak, Catherine's coldness. He hadn't spoken to her since last week, when she brushed off his questions about his job. Finn sensed that their marriage was falling apart, but right now all he cared about was their son. Clara, the fund's accountant, a woman in her 40s with short brown hair, looked in the door. "Finn, did you sign the payment for the shelter?" she asked, holding up the folder. "They called and said they needed the money yesterday." "Signed on your desk," Finn replied, without looking up from the screen. "Oh, you're my hero," Clara smiled. "By the way, are you okay? You look like you haven't slept in a week." "Just a lot of work," Finn shrugged, although his fatigue was not only from work. "Well, hold on. If anything happens, I have some chocolates in the drawer." Clara winked and left, leaving the smell of mint gum. Finn opened the desk drawer where the letter threatening Logan was. He read it again. "Your son is in danger. Ask your wife." Catherine hadn't mentioned any problems other than the leak, but Finn sensed she was hiding something. He hoped Jake would provide answers. At 6 p.m., Finn walked into the Iron Tap on Clark Street. The place was cozy, with wooden tables, dim lighting, and the smell of fried chicken wings. Behind the counter, the bartender, a guy in his 30s with a beard, was cleaning glasses. Finn spotted Jake at a corner table with a bottle of water and a plate of fries. "Hey," Finn sat down opposite, taking off his coat. "What do you have?" "First me, then you," Jake said, pushing his plate away. "I checked Crow. He's not clean." Finn frowned, his fingers tightening on the edge of the table. "What do you mean, not clean?" Jake took a sip of water, his gaze calm but intense. "I served in the Rangers, 2015-2020. In Syria, my team was ambushed. Officially, an intelligence error. But I dug deeper. The sponsor of the operation, a private firm, was connected to Crow. They were testing surveillance software, and we were framed to cover their tracks. 3 of my guys never returned." Finn froze, his eyes widening. "Are you serious? Crow, this is just a businessman." "Businessmen play dirty too," Jake shrugged. "His firm leaked competitors' data in 2022. The Wells Vision leak is his style, and threatening Logan too. He's putting pressure on your wife, either through an affair or blackmail." Finn clenched his fists, his face turning red. "You mean he's using Catherine to break her company?" "Yeah," Jake nodded. "She may not know, but he knows how to hit her where she's weak. Finn leaned back in his chair, feeling dizzy. Why are you telling me this? You're just a security guard. Jake looked into his eyes. Because I owe your wife. In 2007, I was on the streets, homeless. She gave me food in the alley behind the Moonlight Cafe. That changed everything. I joined the army, survived. Now I have to pay back. Finn stared at him, his mouth hanging open. Catherine, are you sure? You never forget her face, Jake said. I recognized her when you showed me the photo. That's why I'm here. Finn rubbed his temples, trying to process it. Catherine, who had saved Jake, was now destroying their family. And Crow, that slimy guy, was using her. I need time, Finn said quietly. I'll talk to her, but don't tell her it was you. I won't tell, Jake nodded. But be careful. Crow's not stupid. Finn stood up, his hands shaking. Thanks, Jake. I'll call. Anytime, Jake replied, watching Finn walk away. The bar was buzzing. At the next table sat a couple, a guy in a cap and a girl with long earrings. Seriously, Tom, did you order those wings again? The girl said, pointing at the plate. They're like rubber. Their normal wings don't whine, the guy replied, chewing. The bartender shouted across the room. Hey, who wants another beer? Last chance before the kitchen closes. Finn walked past, not noticing the noise. He went out into the street, where a cold wind hit his face. At the entrance stood a taxi driver, a man of about 50, smoking a cigarette. Taxi, boss? He asked, blowing out smoke. No, I'll walk, Finn answered, buttoning his coat. Well, it's a cold night. The taxi driver put out his cigarette and went to the car. Finn walked down Clark Street, his mind racing. Catherine, Oliver, Logan's threats, it was all too much. He knew he had to talk to her, but he was afraid she'd lock herself away like she always did. He stopped at a stoplight where a teenager in a hoodie was selling magazines. Take it, it's only $2, he shouted, holding out a glossy magazine. No need, Finn shook his head and moved on. Jake stayed at the bar, finishing his water. He thought about Syria, about the night his team had been trapped. He could still remember the smell of burning and the screams. Crow had been a name on a report then, but now he was a real threat. Jake pulled out his phone and texted Nick, dig deeper on Crow, need proof. The waitress, a girl in her 20s with a butterfly tattoo on her wrist, approached the table. More potatoes? She asked, clearing the plate. No, I'm done, Jake replied, leaving the 10 on the table. Oh, the tip, thank you. The girl smiled. Come again, our burgers are cheaper on Fridays. Jake nodded and walked out. Outside, he checked the Wells House CCTV app, all was quiet. But he knew Crow wouldn't stop. Jake got in his car, started the engine, and drove to his office to prepare for the next step. He wasn't going to let Catherine down, even if she didn't know who he was. Finn arrived at the Lakeview house at 8 o'clock. The lights were on in the living room, but Logan was in his room, headphones on. Finn walked into the kitchen, where a half-eaten pizza box sat on the counter. He opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of soda, and sat staring at the blank wall. The conversation with Jake had changed everything. Catherine wasn't just an unfaithful wife, she was a pawn in Crow's game. Finn decided he would talk to her tomorrow, but without mentioning Jake. He needed to figure out what she knew and how to protect Logan. The neighbor, Mr. Brown, knocked on the kitchen window, holding a pair of garden shears. Finn, have you seen my house? He shouted. Someone took it from the backyard. No, I didn't, Finn answered, opening the window. Maybe your dog took it. This lazy guy, he sleeps all day long. Brown laughed and left. Finn closed the window, feeling the fatigue weighing on his shoulders. He looked at his phone. Catherine had texted, I'll be late, don't wait up. He didn't answer, but he figured he'd find a way to start a conversation in the morning. Logan was the most important thing, and Finn wouldn't let Crow or anyone else hurt his son. Thursday night in the Wells home in Lakeview was quiet but tense. Finn Wells, 42, sat in the living room, clutching a folder of photographs he'd received from a detective 2 weeks ago. Catherine with Oliver Crow at a restaurant, in a car, outside his office. Finn leafed through the pictures, anger welling up inside him. His conversation with Jake the night before had confirmed his worst fears. Crow was using Catherine to undermine her company. But Finn couldn't keep quiet any longer. He would talk to her today. Catherine walked into the house at 8:15 p.m., her heels clicking on the wooden floor. She dropped her bag on a chair in the hallway and took off her coat. Her face was tired, the dark circles under her eyes betraying sleepless nights. She didn't notice Finn until she entered the living room. "You're home," she said, stopping. "I thought you were at a foundation meeting." "Cancelled." Finn stood up, holding the folder. "We need to talk, Catherine." She frowned, adjusting her hair. "Now? I just got off work, Finn. My head is splitting." "This can't wait." His voice was firm, but he tried not to shout. Catherine sighed and sat down on the couch, crossing her arms. "Okay, what happened?" Finn opened the folder and laid 3 photos on the coffee table. Catherine and Oliver, laughing, their hands touching in the car. Her eyes widened and she froze. "Where did this come from?" she asked quietly, her fingers gripping the edge of the sofa. "Detective," Finn replied. "Are you sleeping with him, Catherine?" She looked up, her face flushed. "It's none of your business," she said, but her voice shook. "Not mine." Finn raised his voice. "You're my wife. Logan saw you, Catherine. Our son." Catherine stood up, her hands shaking. "It was stupid, Finn. Stress, work, everything. Oliver. He was just there when you weren't. I wasn't." Finn stepped closer. "I asked how you were every day, and you brushed me off. I tried." Catherine tried. She almost screamed. "You sit in your foundation, sign papers, and I carry the company. Have you ever asked what I want?" "I asked." Finn hit the back of the sofa with his fist. "But you're always busy, always with him." At that moment, the door upstairs creaked. Logan, 17, stood on the stairs, his headphones hanging around his neck. He heard everything. "Are you serious?" His voice was hoarse with anger. "You're yelling at each other like I don't exist." "Logan, go to the room," Finn said, turning to face him. "No." Logan came down, his eyes shining. "Mom, are you really with this guy? And you, Dad, just sit there and take it. I hate both of you." He grabbed his jacket from the coat rack and ran out of the house, slamming the door. Finn lunged for the door, but Catherine grabbed his arm. "No, let it cool down," she said, her voice shaking. "Cool down?" Finn broke away. "Our son runs away, and you protect your lover." "I'm not defending." Catherine clenched her fists. "Oliver. He's important to the business. If I leave him, he could destroy Wells' vision." Finn stared at her, his face turning white. "Are you afraid of him? Or do you just not want to lose your deals?" "You don't understand." Catherine turned away, her eyes filling with tears. "This isn't just an affair. He knows too much." Finn froze, his hands dropping to his sides. "What does he know, Catherine?" She was silent, looking at the floor. Finn realized that he would not get an answer. "I'll find Logan," he said, grabbing the keys. "And you think about what's more important, your company or our family." He walked out, leaving Catherine alone in the living room. Catherine collapsed on the couch, covering her face with her hands. She felt panic tightening in her throat. Logan was gone, Finn hated her, and Oliver. She knew he was manipulative, but his calls, his confidence, kept her trapped. She pulled out her phone to text him, but stopped. Instead, she dialed Sarah, her assistant. "Sarah, are you still in the office?" Catherine asked, trying to keep her voice even. "Yes, I just finished my report," Sarah answered, her voice tired. "Did something happen?" "Nothing, just." "If the press calls, don't answer," Catherine said, "and have the leak report ready tomorrow morning." "Okay, I'll do it." Sarah paused. "Are you okay, Catherine?" "Yes, I'm just tired." Catherine hung up without waiting for an answer. She stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of water. On the table was the box of donuts the delivery man had brought that morning. Catherine opened it, but she didn't feel like eating. She thought about Logan, his scream, his eyes. She wanted to run after him, but her fear of Oliver held her back. What if he published their correspondence, or told the board of directors? Finn stepped outside, his breath steaming in the cold air. Lakeview was quiet, the only lights illuminating the sidewalks. He dialed Logan's number, but there was no answer. Finn walked to the park across the street, where Logan sometimes hung out with his friends. At the entrance to the park stood a man in his 30s, wearing a sport coat, walking his dog. "Hey, have you seen a guy about 17 in a green jacket?" Finn asked. "No, I didn't see anyone," the man replied, tugging on the leash. "My dog scares everyone here, so people run away." "Okay, thanks." Finn moved on, checking his phone. The park was empty. Only a woman of about 60, wearing a knitted scarf, was sitting on a bench, reading a book under a lamp. "Excuse me, have you seen the teenager?" Finn asked. "Oh no, dear, I've only been here 5 minutes," she replied, adjusting her glasses. "But it's quiet here, he's probably gone further." Finn nodded and ran toward the skate park at the end of the street. He knew Logan often hung out there, but the area was empty except for a skater, a guy in his 20s, skating on the ramp. "Hey, have you seen Logan Wells?" Finn called. "Nah, dude, there's nobody here," the skater replied, doing a trick. "Try by the metro, there's some guys hanging out there." Finn clutched his phone, feeling his anxiety grow. He texted Jake, "Logan's gone, check the park." The reply came quickly, "I'll be there in 10 minutes." Finn continued searching the streets, but his thoughts kept returning to Catherine. Her words, stress-induced stupidity, echoed in his head, but the fear in her eyes spoke of something more. Catherine was sitting in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. She jumped, but went to answer it. It was her neighbor, Miss Jenkins, a woman of about 70, with a basket of apples. "Catherine, my dear, I've picked some apples, help yourself," she said, holding out the basket. "My garden has been generous this year." "Thank you, Miss Jenkins." Catherine took the apples, forcing herself to smile. "Oh, you look tired," the neighbor frowned. "All work. Is Logan okay?" "Yes, he's at a friend's," Catherine lied. "It's just a rough day." "Well, rest, my dear." Miss Jenkins patted her on the shoulder and left. Catherine closed the door and walked back into the kitchen. She looked at the apples, but her thoughts were on Logan. She wanted to call him, but she knew he wouldn't answer. Instead, she opened her laptop and began scrolling through the leak reports, trying to distract herself. But Logan's words, "I find both of you disgusting," echoed in her head. Finn reached the subway station, where teenagers were crowded, laughing and filming on their phones. He asked a girl with a backpack if she had seen Logan. "No, I haven't seen it," she replied, chewing gum. "But there are a lot of people here. Ask those guys over there." Finn walked up to the group of kids, but they just shrugged. He felt despair creeping up on him. Logan could be anywhere. Finn had texted him, "Please come back, let's talk." There was no response. He sat on a bench near the subway, watching the cars go by. Talking to Catherine hadn't solved anything. It had only made things worse. But he knew he had to find his son before he could talk to her again. The pizza delivery guy, a guy in a red cap, rode past on his bike, shouting, "Hey man, would you like to order a pizza? Delivery in 10 minutes. "No, thanks," Finn muttered without raising his head. He pulled out his phone and texted Jake, "Check the Belmont subway." He hoped Jake would find Logan faster. Catherine, Oliver, the threats, they could all wait. The important thing was his son. Logan Wells, 17, sat on the concrete embankment near the Adler Planetarium, away from the tourist trail. His backpack was next to him, and on his lap was an old photo album he had stolen from home after his parents had argued. Logan tore up the pages, throwing the pieces into the water. Here he was with his mother at a fair. Here he was with his father fishing. His hands were shaking with anger, and his eyes were red from holding back tears. He had run away from home, not wanting to see either Catherine or Finn. Jake Reed, 34, found him using an app that tracks Logan's phone. He had parked his car 100 yards away and was walking along the embankment, his dark jacket blending into the twilight. Jake spotted Logan sitting on the edge and slowed down. He didn't want to scare the boy. "Hey, Logan," Jake said, stopping 5 meters away. Logan winced, turned around, and clutched the album. "What the hell? Were you following me?" His voice was sharp. "Your dad said you left." Jake shrugged, sitting down on a bench nearby. "I'm doing my job." "Overseer," Logan muttered, tearing off another photograph and crumpling it. "Call it whatever you want." Jake looked at the water. "But tearing up the photos isn't the answer." Logan snorted, but fell silent. A guy in his 20s walked past, wearing headphones, pushing a bicycle. "Hey, dude, do you know where the bathroom is?" he called out, spotting Jake. "Over there, by the cafe." Jake pointed to a building 100 meters away. "Thank you." The guy drove away, singing. Logan threw another piece of the photo into the water and said, "They're lying to me. Mom is with this guy. Dad is silent. They don't need me." Jake nodded without interrupting. "You know, when I was your age, I also thought that no one needed me," he said. "I lived on the street, slept near trash cans." Logan looked at him, his eyes narrowed. "Seriously? You?" "Yeah," Jake chuckled. "When I was 16, I was skinny, dirty, and stealing food, until one woman gave me soup. That changed everything. I joined the army to prove I wasn't trash." Logan fell silent, looking at the album. "I want to be a journalist," he said quietly. "Write about the truth, you know, about real people. But Mom thinks I should go into business like her. And Dad, he doesn't care." "I don't give a shit." Jake shook his head. "He hired me to keep you okay. That's not I don't give a shit." "Then why doesn't he stop her?" Logan clenched his fists. "She's with this crow, and he's just sitting there." Jake paused, choosing his words. "In the army, I trusted my superiors. They set us up in Syria. 3 of my friends died because someone decided to profit from our trust. I learned, the truth is the only thing that keeps you afloat. Your father is trying, Logan. Give him a chance." Logan looked at him, his anger subsiding slightly. "You won't make me forgive them," he said, but without malice. "I'm not trying." Jake stood up. "Let's go home. It's cold." Logan nodded, shoved the album into his backpack, and followed Jake. For once, he didn't argue. Meanwhile, in the Wellsvision office, Catherine Wells, 42, sat at her desk, staring at her phone. It was 9 p.m. The office empty except for the buzz of a janitor vacuuming in the hallway. Oliver Crow had just called, his voice cold. "Catherine, if I don't have the Wellsvision patents by Monday, your correspondence will be posted online. Think about your reputation." She clutched the phone, panic rising in her. She realized that Oliver had been using their affair from the start to gain control of her company. Catherine dialed Finn's number. "Finn, are you home?" she asked when he answered. "No, I'm looking for Logan." His voice was icy. "He ran away after our fight." Catherine froze, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "He's gone?" "Finn, I need your help," she said, her voice shaking. "Help?" Finn almost shouted. "You sleep with Crow, and now you're asking for help." "It's not that simple." Catherine closed her eyes. "He's threatening. He says he'll publish our messages if I don't hand over the patents. I'm in trouble, Finn." Finn was silent, his breathing heavy. "You realize he's threatening Logan?" he said finally. "I'll do what I can for him, but you have to break up with Crow today." "I can't," Catherine shook her head. "If I leave him, he'll destroy Wellsvision." "Then decide, Catherine." Finn raised his voice. "Your company or our son." He hung up. Catherine dropped the phone on the table, her hands shaking. She knew Finn was right, but her fear of Oliver was stronger. A cleaner appeared in the office, a man of about 60 with gray hair and wearing a blue uniform. "Miss Wells, I've finished the hallway," he said, pushing the cart. "Can I vacuum here?" "No, I'm leaving." Catherine stood up, grabbing her bag. "Thank you, Joe." "No problem," he smiled. "My daughter baked a pie yesterday. Would you like a piece?" "Not now." Catherine forced a smile and left. On the street, she called a taxi. The driver, a guy in his mid-20s with a tattoo on his arm, turned on the radio, where dance music was playing. "Where are we going?" he asked, chewing gum. "Lakeview, Addison Street," Catherine answered, looking out the window. "It's a cool area," the driver said. "My cousin lives there and always boasts that it's 5 minutes to the lake." Catherine didn't answer. Her thoughts were on Finn and Logan. She wanted to go get her son, but she didn't know where he was. Instead, she texted him, "Logan, please come back." There was no answer. Jake and Logan rode in his car, the only sound broken by the engine. Logan looked out the window, clutching his backpack. "Are you always this quiet?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Only when I think about it," Jake replied, not looking up from the road. "What are you thinking about?" Logan turned to him. "About keeping you out of trouble," Jake chuckled. "You have a talent for finding it." Logan chuckled but didn't snap back. They passed a coffee shop where a guy in an apron was handing out leaflets. "Half-price coffee, take it," he shouted, shoving the paper under the car's windshield wiper. "People are always trying to sell you something," Logan muttered. "Yeah," Jake agreed, "but sometimes they just want to help, like your mom did." Logan looked at him but said nothing. He wasn't ready to talk about his mother. Finn returned home, not finding Logan. He sat on the porch, checking his phone. Jake had texted, found him, taking him home. Finn exhaled, feeling the tension ease. He looked over at the house next door, where Mrs. Kim, a woman in her 50s, was watering potted plants. "Finn, what are you doing outside?" she shouted, holding the watering can. "It's cold." "Waiting for Logan," he replied, standing up. "How are your flowers?" "Oh, the geranium is blooming like in its youth," she laughed. "Come by tomorrow, I'll give you some seedlings." "Agreed," Finn nodded, but his thoughts were on Catherine. He knew he had to help her, for Logan's sake. But her words, "I can't," cut like a knife. He decided he would talk to her in the morning, but only if she chose family. Catherine arrived home after Jake had already dropped Logan off. She walked into the living room where her son was sitting on the couch, looking at his phone. "Logan, are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft. "Leave me," he muttered without looking up. Catherine started to approach, but stopped. She went into the bedroom where Finn sorted through papers. "He's back," she said quietly. Thanks to Jake, Finn didn't look at her. "Have you decided, Catherine?" I'll try," she swallowed. "But I'm scared, Finn." He nodded but didn't answer. Catherine walked out, feeling loneliness wash over her. She knew she had to break up with Oliver, but she didn't know how. It was a noisy Saturday morning in the Logan High School gym. The squeaking of sneakers, the whistle of a coach, the bounce of a basketball. Jake Reed, 34, stood on the sideline, watching Logan and his team practice shooting. His black t-shirt was sticking to his body with sweat from helping the boys with drills, filling in for an assistant coach. Finn Wells, 42, sat in the stands, clutching a bottle of water. He'd come to watch his son practice, but his mind was on Catherine and her affair with Oliver Crow. He'd barely slept since their latest fight, trying to figure out how to save his family. Jake finished his warm-up and sat down on the bench next to Finn, wiping his sweat with a towel. His left shoulder was wrapped in a bandage, an old injury that had flared up after the previous day's exercise with Logan. He rolled up his sleeve to cover the bandage, and Finn noticed a scar running across a tattoo. The insignia of the U.S. Army Rangers, an eagle with a dagger. "Is that from the Army?" Finn asked, pointing over his shoulder. Jake nodded, untying the bandage. "Yes, Syria, 2018. A grenade fragment." Finn frowned, his gaze lingering on the tattoo. "Rangers? You said you were in the Army, but you didn't say you were in the Special Forces." Jake chuckled, pulling a fresh bandage out of his backpack. "I don't like to brag. It was a long time ago." Finn looked at him more closely. Jake wasn't just a guard, his calm, precise movements betrayed training. "How did you even get into the Army?" he asked. "You don't look like the kind of guy who dreamed of a uniform since he was a kid." Jake paused, wrapping the bandage. "In 2007, I was on the street. 16 years old, no home, no food, sleeping in an alley behind the Moonlight Cafe. Your wife, Catherine, gave me soup and a bun. She said, "Eat while it's warm." I haven't forgotten her face. Finn froze, his fingers tightening around the bottle of water. "Catherine, are you sure?" "Absolutely." Jake tightened the bandage and pulled down his sleeve. "She didn't know my name, but that soup gave me strength. The next day I went to the recruiting office. The army was my chance." Finn shook his head, his eyes widening. "She never told me," he said quietly. It's, it's weird. She saved you, and now." "Destroying your family?" Jake looked at him. "People change, Finn. But the Catherine I met was the real deal." Finn turned away, watching Logan dunk the ball into the basket. He felt his stomach twist. Catherine, who had helped a homeless teenager, was now cheating on him with Oliver Crow, putting their son at risk. But Jake's words about her kindness reminded him of why he had fallen in love with her 17 years ago. "I don't know what to do with her," Finn said, his voice hoarse. "She won't leave Crow. Says he could destroy her company." Jake nodded, his face remaining calm. "She's scared. But you have to keep Logan safe. I'm working on Crow, but you need to talk to her." "I'm trying," Finn said, squeezing the bottle so hard the plastic cracked. "But it's closing." "Then don't push," Jake said. "Just be there for Logan." Finn nodded, but his thoughts were in the past about the Catherine he'd met at the charity event, her smile, the way she always had time for others. Where was that woman now? In the stands sat the team's coach, Mr. Paulson, a man in his 50s with a bald head and wearing a sports jacket. He shouted, "Logan, lift your elbows. Don't be lazy." "Roger that, coach," Logan responded, throwing the ball. Next to Paulson sat a woman of about 40, wearing a bright sweatshirt, munching popcorn. "My son's on the team too," she told Finn, nodding toward the guy at the hoop. "Your kid's a pretty good shot." "Thanks," Finn said, forcing a smile. "He's trying." "Oh, my Brandon always whines that training is hard," she laughed. "But I tell him, don't give up, man." Finn nodded, but his thoughts were on Catherine. He stood up to go to Logan, but he had already gone into the locker room. Jake stood up too, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "I'll go get him," Jake said. "Are you going home?" "Yes." Finn looked at his watch. "Thanks for telling me." "You're welcome." Jake walked away, his steps quick and confident. Finn walked out of the gym and headed to his car. The school security guard, a guy in his mid-20s, was standing in the parking lot, wearing a blue uniform, chewing a sandwich. "Hey, mister, can you tell me where the gas station is?" he asked, wiping his hands on his pants. "2 blocks on Belmont," Finn answered, opening the door. "Cool, thanks." The guard nodded and returned to his sandwich. Finn got into the car, but didn't start the engine. He pulled out his phone and opened an old photo. Catherine and Logan in the park 5 years ago. She was laughing, holding her son's hand. Finn felt tears sting his eyes. Catherine, who had helped Jake, was out there somewhere in the past. But he didn't know how to bring her back. Meanwhile, Jake caught up with Logan at the exit of the school. Logan was carrying a basketball. His hair was wet from the shower. "You're here again?" Logan asked, but without the previous anger. "That's just the job," Jake shrugged. "It was a good throw." "Yeah, the coach said I could start." Logan smiled, but quickly grew serious. "Dad looked like crap. Because of Mom?" Jake paused, then said, "They'll figure it out. You just do your job." Logan nodded and walked toward the bus stop. Jake followed 10 meters behind, checking his phone. He had a text from Nick, his army friend, "Digging into Crow, info coming soon." Jake put his phone away, his thoughts going back to 2007, to the alley, to Catherine. He didn't know why she had changed, but he was determined to protect her family. Finn arrived home in Lakeview around noon. There was an ad for a local cafe in his mailbox, and he noticed that the front lawn was overgrown. A neighbor, Miss Evans, a woman in her 60s, was watering the rose bushes. "Finn, have you seen the flowers this year?" she called out, holding the hose. My roses are just amazing. Beautiful, Finn replied, coming over. How's your grandson? Oh, Timmy scraped his knee skateboarding again. She shook her head. But he's a good boy. He's not crying. Logan is the same, Finn smiled, but his voice was tired. Say hello to Catherine, said Miss Evans. I haven't seen her for a long time. I'll pass it on, Finn nodded and entered the house. It was quiet inside. Catherine was at work. Logan hadn't returned yet. Finn walked into the kitchen, where a bowl of apples from a neighbor sat on the table. He took one, but didn't eat it, putting it back. He thought about Catherine, about her kindness, which Jake had told him about. How could the woman who saved a homeless teenager become the one who was destroying their family? He decided that he would try to talk to her again that evening, but without accusations. Maybe she was still there, somewhere inside. Jake sat in a cafe near the school, waiting for Logan. He ordered a black coffee and scrolled through his laptop, checking the data on Crow. The cafe was noisy, smelling of fresh buns. Behind the counter stood the barista, a girl in her 20s with a pierced nose. Hey, want a bun? She called Jake. Fresh out of the oven. No, thank you, he replied, without looking up from the screen. Well, whatever, she shrugged and turned to another customer, a guy in a jacket, who ordered a latte. Do it quickly, I'm late, the guy said, pointing to the phone. No problem, the barista replied, turning on the coffee machine. Jake closed his laptop, finished his coffee, and walked out. He knew Crow was a threat, but talking to Finn gave him hope. If Catherine was the one who helped him 18 years ago, he would do everything to keep her son safe. Finn sat in the living room, flipping through an old scrapbook. On one page was a picture of Catherine in the kitchen, laughing and holding a bowl of dough. This was before Wells' vision, before Oliver, before everything. Finn felt his chest tighten. He didn't know how to bring Catherine back, but Jake's words about her kindness gave him hope. He decided he would talk to her when she returned and find a way to protect Logan. Finn Wells, 42, sat at his desk, scrolling through his contacts on his phone. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep after his conversation with Catherine and Jake's revelations. He couldn't turn off his thoughts. The threats to Logan, Catherine's affair with Oliver Crow, the Wells Vision leak, they were all part of the same chain. Finn knew it was time to act, and his connections at the foundation were his only chance. He dialed Linda Hart, the lawyer the foundation worked with on grants. Linda, a woman in her 50s with a raspy voice, answered on the second ring. Finn, why are you calling on a Saturday? She said, a dog barking in the background. Linda, I need help, Finn said quietly, checking to make sure the office door was locked. This isn't about the foundation, it's personal. Wow, that sounds serious, Linda coughed. Tell me. There's a man, Oliver Crow, from Crow Media. I think he's blackmailing my wife, threatening our son. Can you check him out? Financial schemes, anything. Linda paused, then said, Crow's a big player, Finn. It's not just digging. But I have a friend at the IRS who can look at his accounts. Give me a couple of days. Thank you, Linda, Finn exhaled. This is important. No problem, but you owe me a steak later, she chuckled. My dog, by the way, chewed my slippers again, so I'm not in the mood right now. New excuse for steak, Finn smiled, but his voice was tired. He hung up and opened his laptop to send Linda the data he had gleaned from the news on Crow. Mark, the volunteer coordinator, a guy in his 30s with an anchor tattooed on his forearm, knocked on the door. Finn, I brought a report on the shelter, he said, shoving the folder onto the table. And oh, there's a coffee shop downstairs that's opened, and the raspberry muffins are amazing. Thanks, Mark, Finn nodded. I'll try the muffins later. You won't regret it, Mark winked and left, whistling a melody. Finn turned back to his laptop, but his thoughts were on Catherine. Her fear of Crow, her words about blackmail, were haunting him. He wanted to believe that she would choose her family, but after their fight, trust was fading. Jake Reed sat in the Shield Point office, a small room overlooking a parking lot. His desk was covered in papers and empty coffee cups. He had just received a text from Nick, a friend of his from the army. Crow moved money offshore in 2023, possibly for hackers. Details tonight. Jake knew that Crow's servers were the key to the evidence. There was no way to hack them legally, but he had a plan. Find an insider at Crow Media. Jake dialed Finn. "Finn, it's Jake," he said when Jake answered. "I have an idea. We can get the data from Crow's servers, but we'll need someone inside his company." "Inside?" Finn frowned, his voice tense. "It's dangerous." "Not if we do it quietly," Jake replied. "Catherine has access to their meetings. She might know someone who's upset with Crow." Finn paused, then said, "She won't want to help. She's afraid of him." "Then convince her," Jake said calmly but firmly. "If Crow is blackmailing her, we don't have much time." "I'll try," Finn sighed, "but I don't trust her, Jake." "I understand," Jake said. "Just tell her it's for Logan. I'll handle the rest." Finn agreed and hung up. Jake opened his laptop and started searching for contacts at Crow Media. His colleague, Ray, a balding security guard in his 40s, peered into the room. "Reed, you haven't had lunch again?" he said, chewing on a sandwich. "We've got pizza in the kitchen. Grab some before it gets cold." "Not hungry," Jake replied, not looking up from the screen. "Well, whatever," Ray shrugged. "My daughter baked a cake yesterday. Do you want me to bring you a piece?" "Pass," Jake smiled. "But thanks." Ray left, leaving behind the smell of bacon. Jake sent a request to a hacker friend who could find a weak link in Crow's staff. He knew the plan would be more difficult without Catherine, but he hoped Finn would convince her. Catherine Wells sat in her office at WellsVision, staring at her phone. Oliver Crow hadn't called since their last conversation, but his threat hung over her. She knew he was using her, but the fear of losing her company paralyzed her. Her assistant, Sarah, knocked on the door. "Catherine, here's a delivery," she said, holding up a box with the cafe's logo. "Salad and coffee, just the way you like it." "Thank you, Sarah." Catherine took the box. "Anything else?" "Yes, the reporters are calling again," Sarah winced. "I said you were busy, but they're persistent." "Let them wait," Catherine waved her hand. "I'm not in the mood." Sarah nodded and left. Catherine opened the box, but the food remained untouched. She dialed Finn's number, her fingers shaking. "Finn, we need to talk," she said when he answered. "I'm listening." His voice was cold. "I want to help," Catherine swallowed. "For Logan, but I don't know how to get out of this." "Then make a move," Finn said. "Do you have contacts at Crow Media? Someone who can give us access to their servers?" Catherine froze. "There's this guy, Tim. He's in there. He was complaining about Crow, saying he was cutting bonuses." "This is your chance," Finn said quietly but firmly. "Give his contact information to my man. But Catherine, you have to break up with Crow." I'll try," she said, her voice weak. "But you don't believe me, do you?" "I don't believe it," Finn replied. "But I'll do anything for Logan." He hung up. Catherine dropped the phone on the table, tears stinging her eyes. She knew she had to make amends, but her fear of Oliver was stronger. Finn sat in his car outside the house, sending Tim's contact to Jake. He felt his anger at Catherine mingle with hope. If they had proof against Crow, Logan would be safe. A neighbor, Mr. Lewis, a man in his 60s, walked past on the street, carrying bags of leaves. "Finn, why are you sitting in the car?" he shouted. "It's spring. Go mow the grass." "Soon," Finn replied, forcing a smile. "Have you collected the leaves?" "Yeah, my back aches, but it's done," Lewis chuckled and left. Finn started the engine and drove to the office to meet Linda. She had written, "Found something on Crow, come over." He knew it was just the beginning, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like they had a plan. Jake received a text from Finn with Tim's contact information. He was sitting in a coffee shop across from the Shield Point office, sipping a black coffee. Behind the counter, the barista, a guy in his 20s with green hair, was wiping down the coffee machine. "Hey, more coffee?" he called to Jake. No, I'm out, Jake replied, opening his laptop. Well, as you know, we have a new variety from Colombia. The guy shrugged and turned to the girl, ordering a smoothie. Make it without sugar, I'm on a diet, the girl said, adjusting her glasses. Jake texted Tim, need help with the Crow Media servers. Can we talk? He knew the insider was a risk, but this was their best chance. He checked his watch. Logan should be at basketball. Jake decided to stop by the school to check if everything was okay. Catherine stayed in the office, scrolling through her phone contacts. She found Tim's number and sent it to Finn, but her hands were still shaking. She wanted to fix it, but the thought of confronting Oliver was terrifying. Outside, at the entrance to the office, stood the delivery guy, a guy in a red jacket with a box of food. Hey, miss, is this for Sarah? He called through the glass door. Yes, leave it with security, Catherine answered without leaving. The courier nodded and left. Catherine looked at the empty office, where only the monitors were glowing. She knew she had to make a choice, but for now she could only wait. Finn arrived at Linda's office, a small downtown law firm. She greeted him at the reception desk, holding a clipboard. Finn, I have data on Crow, she said, adjusting her glasses. But it's not that simple. He's hiding his money through 3 companies. Can you prove it? Finn asked, his voice tense. Give me a day, Linda replied. And by the way, buy some coffee, the machine's broken. Agreed, Finn nodded, feeling his hope grow. He went out into the street, where a guy with newspapers shouted, News of the day, take it, it's only $1. Finn shook his head and got into the car. He knew Catherine had agreed to help, but her fear of Crow spoke volumes. He hoped Jake and Linda would find a way out, for Logan's sake. Daylight flooded the schoolyard as Logan Wells, 17, emerged from the building after school. His backpack slung over one shoulder and his headphones dangling around his neck, he was heading toward the basketball court to practice with his friends. Jake Reed, 34, watched from his car, parked across the street. His gut instinct told him that the threats Finn had warned Logan about might come true today. Jake checked his phone. A text from a Crow Media insider, Tim, confirmed that Oliver Crow had hired men for a show of force. Jake gripped the steering wheel, his eyes following every movement in the yard. Logan reached the court where 2 guys in sports jackets were already standing. One, a tall guy with a tattoo on his neck, threw him a ball. Hey, Wells, come on, show us some class, he shouted, grinning. I'll throw it in now, Logan replied, catching the ball. But Jake noticed 2 other guys standing by the fence. They were older, wearing dark hoodies, and their eyes were too focused. One adjusted his hood, the other reached into his pocket. Jake got out of the car, his movements quick but stealthy. He knew they weren't random onlookers. As Logan made his throw, one of the guys in the hoodie came closer. Hey, kid, he said, his voice rough. Come on, let's talk. Logan frowned, stepping back. What do you want? I don't know you. The second guy stepped forward, blocking the way. Don't talk nonsense, come here. He grabbed Logan by the backpack. Logan flinched, but at that moment Jake appeared next to him. He pushed the first guy in the chest, forcing him to retreat. Step back, Jake said, his voice calm but firm. Who are you? The second one barked, taking something out of his pocket. Jake didn't answer, but reacted sharply. Let's go, Jake said, not taking his eyes off the boys. Hey, what's wrong? Shouted the school security guard, a man in his 40s in a blue uniform, running from the entrance. I'm calling the cops. The boys in the hoodies looked at each other and ran across the yard. Jake didn't follow them, checking to see if Logan was okay. Are you okay? He asked, examining the boy. Logan nodded, his face pale and his arm bruised from the grip. Thank you for not letting them touch me, he said quietly, for the first time without insolence. It's my job, Jake shrugged, but his shoulder hurt. Come on, I'll take you home. Logan didn't argue, following Jake to the car. There was a small crowd of students gathered at the playground, one of them, a guy in a baseball cap, taking pictures on his phone. Dude, that was awesome, he shouted at Jake. You're like an action movie. Delete the video, Jake said, getting into the car. Okay, the guy chuckled and put the phone away. Catherine Wells, 42, was sitting in her office at Wells Vision when Finn called. Her phone was lying on her desk next to her half-finished coffee. Catherine, Logan was just threatened outside the school, Finn said, his voice shaking with anger. Jake stopped them, but he's hurt. Catherine jumped up, her hands shaking. Is Logan okay? Where is he? She asked, grabbing her bag. With Jake on their way home, Finn said. It's Crow, Catherine. You have to break up with him. I know, Catherine swallowed. I'll do it. Do it, Finn hung up. Catherine sank into a chair, her eyes filling with tears. She pictured Logan, his bruises, and knew she couldn't hold back any longer. Oliver had used her, and now he was threatening her son. She dialed his number. Catherine, it's good to hear from you. Oliver's voice was smooth but cold. This is the end, Oliver, she said, her voice firm. I won't give you the patents, and stay away from my family. Think twice, he chuckled. I have your messages. Do whatever you want, Catherine hung up, feeling her fear give way to determination. She walked out of the office, ignoring the gaze of Liz, the intern who was sorting papers in the reception area. Catherine, do you need some water? Asked Liz, a girl of about 20 with a long braid. No, I'm leaving, Catherine replied, walking quickly toward the elevator. Downstairs, at the entrance, stood a courier, a guy in a green jacket, with a box of sushi. Hey, is this for the 5th floor? Where's security? He shouted. To the right, Catherine said, getting into a taxi. The driver, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair, turned on the radio, where an old rock ballad was playing. Where are we going? She asked, adjusting the mirror. Lakeview, Addison Street, Catherine answered, looking out the window. It's a nice area, the driver said. My sister lives there and always brags about the view of the lake. Catherine nodded, but her thoughts were on Logan. She needed to see him, make sure he was okay. Finn met Jake and Logan at the house. Logan got out of the car, his face tense, but he hugged his father. Dad, I'm fine, he said, showing the bruise on his arm. Jake chased them away. Finn looked at Jake, who was holding his shoulder. How are you? He asked. It's a bruise, nothing serious, Jake replied, wincing. But it's definitely Crow's men. Catherine arrived 10 minutes later, jumped out of the taxi, and ran towards Logan. Logan, are you okay? She hugged him, her hands shaking. Mom, let go, I'm okay. Logan pulled away, but not roughly. Catherine noticed the bruise and turned to Finn. I broke up with Oliver, she said quietly, and I'll help with the evidence. Finn nodded, but his gaze was cold. Okay, we have an insider, Tim, from Crow Media. He will give access to their servers. I know Tim, said Catherine. He sent me the password yesterday. Finn looked at her, his face softening, but he remained silent. A neighbor, Mr. Thompson, a man in his 60s, walked past carrying a bag of groceries. Hey, Wells, everything okay? He called. You look like the world is falling apart. Just a family night, Finn replied, forcing a smile. Well, if anything, I have beer in the fridge. Thompson chuckled and left. Finn and Catherine sat at the kitchen table while Logan went to his room. Jake stayed in the living room, checking messages from Tim. Catherine opened her laptop and logged in using Tim's password. The screen showed folders with Crow's correspondence, evidence of blackmail, orders to hackers, transfers of money for services. Here it is, said Catherine, pointing to the file. He wrote to me from this address. Finn copied the data to a flash drive. I'll pass this on to Linda, he said. She knows how to sue. Catherine nodded, her eyes tired. I'm going to give a press conference tomorrow, she said. I'm admitting my mistakes, and I'm leaving Wells Vision. Finn looked at her, his eyebrows raised. Are you serious? For Logan, she replied. I've lost too much. Finn didn't answer, but his hand tightened around the flash drive. He knew it wouldn't fix their marriage, but it was a step. The next day, Catherine stood in front of microphones in the Wells Vision conference room. Reporters, about 20 of them, were filming. One, a guy in a wrinkled shirt, raised his hand. "Miss Wells, is it true that you are leaving?" he asked. "Yes," Catherine said calmly, but her voice shook. "I made mistakes, both personal and professional. For the sake of my family, I am leaving my post." The reporter, a woman with short hair, shouted, "What about the data leak?" "We've handed the evidence over to the authorities," Catherine replied. "That's all." She walked out of the room, ignoring the questions. In the corridor stood a cleaning lady, a woman of about 50, with a cart. "Miss Wells, you are a good girl for telling the truth," she said, wiping the floor. "Thank you," Catherine smiled weakly and left. Finn, meanwhile, met with Linda Hart in her office. He handed over the flash drive. "It's all here," he said. "Correspondence, translations, evidence of blackmail." "Okay," Linda opened her laptop. "I'll pass this on to the police. Crow's in trouble. Up to his ears." "Thank you, Linda." Finn stood up. "Call me when the arrest happens." "Of course," she nodded. "And Finn, buy Logan a pizza. He deserves it." Finn smiled and walked out. Outside, a guy was handing out flyers for a concert. "Hey, take it. Admission is free," he shouted. Finn shook his head and got into the car. He knew Catherine had made a move, but the road to reconciliation was long. Chicago, June 2025. It was a warm summer morning in Lakeview, the sun shining on neat lawns and blooming flower beds. Finn Wells, 42, stood on the porch of his house, holding a mug of coffee. 3 months ago, their lives had been a mess. Threats to Logan, betrayal by Catherine, an attack on Wells Vision. Now Oliver Crow was under arrest for blackmail and corporate espionage, and Wells Vision, under new management, had reinstated its contracts. Finn had signed divorce papers from Catherine 2 weeks ago, but they had agreed to joint custody of Logan. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it offered hope. Finn looked down the street where his neighbor, Mr. Graham, a man in his 50s, was fixing a bicycle. "Hey, Finn, can you help me with the chain?" Graham called, wiping his hands with a rag. "That junk's come off again." "Right now." Finn put the mug on the railing and walked over. "Where's the key?" "Over there, on the grass." Graham pointed at the instrument. "My son raced yesterday, and here are the results." Finn helped tighten the chain, his thoughts on Logan. His son had changed, less angry, more talkative. Yesterday, he had received a letter from Northwestern University. He had been accepted to study journalism. Finn smiled as he handed back the key. "Done. You're a good boy." Graham clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on Sunday, we'll have a barbecue." "Agreed." Finn returned to his coffee, feeling lighter. Catherine Wells, 42, stood at a veterans center in the West Loop, stacking boxes of books. After leaving Wells Vision, she had started volunteering, helping organize classes for former service members. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail, and jeans and a t-shirt had replaced her business suits. She wanted to win Logan's trust back, but she knew it would take time. "Catherine, where are these textbooks?" asked the volunteer, Lisa, a woman in her 30s with short blonde hair, holding a stack of books. "On the shelf by the window," Catherine replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Thank you, Lisa." "No problem," Lisa smiled. "My brother says these courses are a lifesaver. After the army, he spent 2 years looking for a job." "I'm glad it helps," Catherine nodded, sorting through the folders. She thought about Logan. He had hugged her for the first time in months yesterday when she helped him with his college essay. It was a small step, but Catherine clung to it. Her divorce from Finn had been painful, but they had agreed to be parents, not enemies. She glanced at her watch. It was time to go home. Logan had promised to be there for dinner. Logan Wells, 17, sat in the school library, working on a presentation. His laptop was open to a slide about a veterans project he had started at school. The idea came from conversations with Jake Reed, his security guard, who had told him about his service. Logan wanted the students to collect veterans' stories for a local magazine. The project had already been approved, and he felt proud. His classmate, Amy, a girl with braces and a brightly colored sweatshirt, peered over his shoulder. "Logan, this looks cool," she said, chewing gum. "Did you really come up with this yourself?" "Yeah," Logan smiled. "Jake, well, my security guard gave me the idea." "A security guard?" Amy giggled. "Like a bodyguard?" "Something like that," Logan shrugged. "He's okay." "Cool," Amy poked at the screen. "Add some photos, it'll be more lively." "Good idea," Logan nodded, writing it down. The librarian, a woman in her 60s with glasses on a chain, approached the desk. "Guys, be quiet," she said, straightening the books. "And Logan, give me back that Lincoln biography, it's overdue." "I'll bring it tomorrow," Logan promised, closing the laptop. He packed his things and left, feeling his mood lighten. Getting into journalism and the project gave him a purpose, and talking to Jake helped him realize he could be himself, not a carbon copy of his mother. Finn was sitting in the Horizon Trust office, finishing a report. He decided to offer Jake a job as a security consultant for the foundation. Jake had proven himself reliable, and Finn wanted him in their lives. He dialed his number. "Jake, this is Finn," he said when he answered. "I'd like to offer you a job, security consultant for the foundation." "Seriously?" Jake's voice was surprised. "I didn't expect that." "You saved Logan," Finn said, "and me. This is less than you deserve." "I'll think about it," Jake replied, "but thanks." "Come to dinner tonight," Finn added. "Logan will be happy." "Deal," Jake hung up. Paul, the Grant's manager, a man in his 40s wearing a plaid shirt, looked into the office. "Finn, have you seen the new printer?" he said, holding up a stack of papers. "This thing prints like a rocket." "Haven't tried it yet," Finn smiled, "but it sounds cool." "Oh, try it," Paul winked. "And by the way, my wife is making lasagna this weekend. Come over with Logan." "Thanks, I'll think about it," Finn replied, packing his things. He walked out of the office feeling the weight of the last few months lifted. The divorce had been hard, but for Logan's sake, he had found common ground with Catherine. That evening, the Wells house was filled with the smell of fried chicken and potatoes. Finn was setting the table, Logan was laying out napkins, and Catherine was cutting salad. Jake walked in holding a bottle of soda. "Hey, Jake, you're just in time," Logan called, setting down the plates. "Dad, he likes potatoes, so don't eat them all." "No chance," Finn laughed, putting the bowl on the table. Catherine looked at Jake, her eyes grateful. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, "and for everything you've done." "It's my job," Jake shrugged, but smiled. They sat down at the table, and Logan raised his glass of soda. "Jake, are you ours now?" he asked, grinning. "Take your time, kid," Jake chuckled, "but I'll think about your dad's offer." "Cool," Logan nodded. "It's boring without you." Catherine looked at Logan, her face softening. "I'm proud of you," she said. "Your project for veterans is important." "Yeah, thanks." Logan was embarrassed, but smiled. Finn was silent, looking at them. He felt a warmth he hadn't felt in months. After dinner, he walked out onto the porch, looking out at the lights of Chicago. Catherine's kindness 18 years ago had given him Logan and Jake, a friend who had become a part of their lives. Despite her betrayal, he saw the girl from the coffee shop in her, and that gave him hope. A neighbor, Miss Rose, a woman in her 70s, walked past carrying a bag of groceries. "Finn, have you had dinner?" she called. "I'm making cherry pie. Come back tomorrow." "Of course," Finn replied, smiling. He returned to the house, where Logan and Jake were arguing over whose team would win the basketball game. Catherine was clearing away the dishes, her face calm. Finn realized that their family, though changed, had become anew. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.